welcome back to Event About It, the Dynamic Dialogue After Show. I'm your host, Megan Martin, and I am here today with the fabulous and wonderful Marc Ghafoori. And Marc, tell the people who you are, and then we'll get right into it.
Well, I am a human being that is based out of St. Louis, Missouri. No, so I'm a CEO and founder of AlphaTooth. Been in the industry for 15 plus years, and I don't know, here to have some fun. Let's change the world, maybe. I don't know.
I think we're both trying to at least change the events industry. We could start there.
Yes.
Baby steps into it.
It's our corner of the world.
Yeah, I like that. Our corner of the world. Well, that kind of brings me into, we were talking about innovation, changing things up, taking over our corner of the world, which is events, which honestly impacts the whole world because we're bringing so many people together. You started AlphaTooth end of last year, beginning of this year. Talk a little bit about like something you've learned in starting AlphaTooth that maybe a book or a mentor hadn't told you, like the inspiration to starting and maybe some of the challenges that you've run into, like venturing out on your own.
Still under a year marker, but what I found in myself is that I'm kind of like a dog chasing after cars sometimes. Like I pursue, and I kind of purposely built the business this way, and you'll maybe understand why once I get into this here. Like I very much love getting into projects and like start rolling with it and just like setting it off into the universe and going off onto another thing. And maybe there's a clinical name for this. I'm sure that there is, but nobody's ever told
I
me.
think it's called
But like,
crazy, but I get it.
yes. But no, I find enjoyment of the building and in that aspect of it, but I can't really like focus for the long-term maintenance of something. So like what I found that if like in my soul searching for the early days of the business, I was trying to figure out like, okay, what is my product? How can I develop that and to something that I would enjoy? And that's kind of like how I got to it. Like I had some time and a runway to be able to think about it like in a very deep and meaningful way. Talk to many people like you to in the early days to figure out like, well, what the hell does it look like? Like, because in the land of consultancy and the land of an agency, you can do so many different things. And the umbrella term of agency and producer is that you kind of just do it all, you figure it out. So trying to refine that was like super interesting. And I I had this naive thinking that, okay, I built it. I went through that exercise and it would be good. But then I realized like, I actually need to reevaluate like every 90 days, just like kind of when I put the timestamp on, because again, I'm a dog chasing after cars. And like, I found myself wandering off and I'm two neighborhoods over and like far away from home and I need to recenter myself. So like that's been something of a discovery for myself is kind of like the ambiguous nature of it. I think about it like I'm trying to hold an octopus that's trying to like escape from my hands in a constant like
Yeah.
state of things.
Well, and I
And I have
think
to
you
try to.
evolve, right? Like we've talked about this quite a
Oh
bit
yeah.
because kind of started the podcast conversation and thinking about what this would be. And it's definitely from where I started in the first idea I brought to the producer that I work with, Rachel, to what we actually do now is completely different. And definitely felt dog chasing a bone a little bit at times, like just the evolution. And I read a great book. Gary Shapiro is the CEO of CTA, the Consumer Electronics Show, is their big show, what they're known for. He wrote a book called Pivot, and I think it's actually called Pivot or Die. And it talks about some of the biggest brands in the world of how they evolved, right? They were kind of had this dream and a dog with a bone ended up in a completely different space or area than where they initially started, which I think you and I have kind of both found ourselves in this year. And I recently had the same thought of I need to be reevaluating this more than once a year or be steadfast in like, this is what I'm doing. Like when it comes to consultancy, some products, I think you can be a little more bullish of like, I'm not budging, like I have a vision, I'm going to do it. But I think in this land of
I'm jealous
consultancy
of
and
this.
noise, right, you kind of have to
Well,
evolve.
I don't I don't well I said I'm jealous, but I'm not really because like I feel like I would be so damn bored in that instance of like because the fun nature of like what we do is our product is dynamic. So is maybe our ideal customer profile, our ICP. Like that might shift as we continue to evolve one, and one maybe refines the other, changes the other. And it's like, and that evolves through the iterative process of changing the product and what you build. The market that it meets will look different on a constant basis. So both need to morph to be able to key in with each other in the most meaningful way. And that discovery is where I find a lot of fun. Like, and that's where I'm like, I have a lot of fun with my own business on that side of it. And like, I'm curious on your side. I know this is supposed to be coming over me, but I'm going to throw a question to you.
Okay.
How has your ICP changed for like, or has it changed? And like who you're talking to through this medium that you've built?
I don't know that my ICP has changed, but the pain points and the offerings and the things that I'm realizing that I'm really good at, that I want to do more of, align with my ICP. So I kind of started in like, this is what I want to offer, this is what I want to do. But to your point, they're not really buying that. And while I'm good at it, I really want to do more things that I'm passionate about. And then I'm finding the things I'm passionate about that I love to do is actually what my ICP needs more than what I initially was wanting to offer. So now I'm leaning more into this like subcategory that I thought was a subcategory that's now sort of the primary driver, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And there's this like, there's a certain amount of that that's like looking over the edge of a cliff while you have like you come to that realization, because unless you have like user data to be able to back it up to some really sophisticated degree, which like pretty much no startup does, um, there's a certain amount of it that's based on gut, or like based on feedback from other folks that are coming in and contributing to the decision that you're making. And that's where it's like you're jumping off the edge and you don't know where the bottom is because there's a fog there. Sometimes it's just a step down, sometimes it's 30 feet down. And you don't know where you don't know where the bottom's going to be, but you know it's there at some point. And that's fun, and there's definitely an adrenaline rush for that aspect of it. That is, I don't know. That's the part that I unexpectedly, like I wasn't expecting to enjoy that aspect of it so much, like the adrenaline rush that you get from building something, putting it into the universe, and then seeing what the reception is of that, and whether or not it's welcomed or not. And like people are brutal with their feedback, and I love and hate that at the same time, because it's like when you push it out into the universe, it's like, well, there's my baby. Watch it go. Like, look how beautiful it is. Look how great it is. It's like the best. Look how he's reading way above his grade level, and he's the fastest in his class. And it's like, no, the field just wasn't big enough. And now you see how he stacks up against everywhere else.
You're
And
so excited about your
the
video
kid,
game, and 100% of people tell you it's dumb. We love it, but it's so dumb. And
yes,
you're just like, okay,
yes.
well, I'm still going to do it anyway.
But and that was funny because it's like I think 9 out of 10 people said that they would play it again, and they did play it again, and they attempted to beat their scores, and they also had that. So like I commented on somebody's LinkedIn yesterday, the day before, something along the lines of this, and it's two things can be true simultaneously.
Yeah.
You can win and you can lose. People can have fun and think that it's really stupid all at the same time. And like that thought process as applied to a business is weirdly interesting. Like
Yeah, it
that's
is.
a place that I want to explore, like for all time. Like I think if I could do that like forever, um I would never retire, and I would always be here doing that.
I
It's
love
like
it.
somebody pay me to do that.
There you
Like
go.
somebody,
Well,
come on.
that kind of leads into something I've been thinking about lately that we've kind of talked about, is realizing at what point your company and your brand kind of become the same thing, right? So whether that's like a physical brand that people resonate like with your logo or whatever, I think for me, when I think about this context of this question of how I present myself and the way I want my company, like I was working with coming up with the branding for the podcast and some of my own work that I'm doing. She was like, well, how do you want people to feel when they're done working with you, with the company? What does that look like? And for you, where do you draw the line? And maybe there is no line between brand and business. And you personally, like, do you separate them? Like, I am Mark and this is
Hmm.
the company, or are they kind of one and the same?
I kind of started on this journey almost before AlphaTooth. Like I was kind of doing some of this work
Yeah.
when I was with Heritage and when I was in my later days there to do some of these things. And I was just doing it for fun, like some of the content that I would produce on LinkedIn and put out there, and some of the other things that I would do for clients that wasn't a part of my job description, but I was just like, you got a problem over here. Let's maybe like, can we focus on this and like not worry about like what we actually need to worry about? Let's go talk about this. And like, so like that was my brand, like it was already me. And so what I did when I kind of hit the pavement and trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up before I formed AlphaTooth, like I went on that discovery of like, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? And I credit an industry contact that planted the seed in my head that was basically just like, Mark, why don't you just do what you were doing? Like sell yourself as the product. That is your product. Because at the time I was like, it's that pie in the sky idea. I always want my own company. I always want my own business. What do I do? How do I do that? What's my product? Because as a GSC, we had like, tractor trailers worth of graphics and boring ass carpet and tables and chairs and all of that. And I'm like, I'm not buying inventory. I'm not doing that. So like, the brand is me, but here's the flip side. Here's the difficult thing is like, let's say, because I like to think of right here and now, and I like to also think 20 years down the road at the same time, because both things can exist. I'm like, if I get to a point where I want to sell this, I want to market this as a product offering, and I expand this and grow this, and one day this becomes something bigger, and I want to sell this. If it's attached to me, there's not really an ability to do that. Like it's then it is me, and if I sell my name, then my name could be doing weird things out there later on down the road. So like that's where I like to have the AlphaTooth name associated with it, but I haven't really pieced that together. Like what do I do when I get to that point, or if I get to that point? Um, right now, I'm focusing on the here and now, and maybe I'll pave a path that connects me to there. But I think I have some semblance of that in the IP and intellectual property that I'm producing through AlphaTooth to kind of stand alone on itself for some of the stuff that we're rolling out. I'm pretty damn excited about. So like that will be I lied. That will be the first steps towards that and a standalone thing. Um, and that came about from kind of one of those like 90-day exercises that I just kind of like accidentally started doing was like, okay, what 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 can I do to get closer to the core aspect of what I want to deliver and what my clients and prospective clients want to consume? How do I meet them more appropriately? And that was kind of like you said, it was like accidentally stumbling on something that is like more meaningful and connects deeper into what both really want. And that was a cool moment. That
Yeah.
was a fantastic moment, I will say.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about it a little different, and I have to kind of separate the podcast from some of the other work that I do. And some of the other work that I do, I don't know that I'm ever going to develop intellectual property. I mean, never say never, but like I'm not developing
Yeah. Uh-huh.
prescriptions and modules like you are per se. Like I don't know that I've ever really thought about like, do I have a product that's sellable? The podcast, sure, someone could buy it and change the host out, and it could be its own thing for sure. I've thought about that. But when it comes to like my
Mm-hmm.
business and the work that I do every day, I've never really like it's always felt like I was the brand, I was the company. And so this thought has
Uh-huh.
recently come in of what do I do when I'm grown up and I don't want to work anymore? Do I just like close down a decade worth of a business that because I am the brand? And I think entrepreneurs kind of struggle with this a little bit. If you're not building a product per se and you're consulting, at what point do you separate the two? And I just wanted to gauge your thoughts on it because I think you've done a really nice job of having product that separates from you, Mark, your personal brand that you could sell off your company one day. And I don't know that a lot of people think about it that way.
I will say, like on your side, to shovel some praises over to you on your side, like what you do for the podcast and your involvement with organizations, I think is fascinating, and how you're interacting with those other organizations and kind of doing that juggling act on that side to be able to be like a true partner for all aspects of it. I think is fantastic. And then for this, um, what I could see is the evolution that does like create like a full flight moment, not a full flight moment because it is a taking on a life of its own. Let's say is like developing a segmentation, developing something that is like cohorted. Maybe that's not the right word, but like collaborative in how you build and what you do to really enable you to continue to grow like you know you will be continuing to do for this. I think there's a path there. Just in the same way that like you see me developing those products that are standing alone, and I don't think like they're a part of me, and I feel like they're myself and my own identity. I think it's the same way on your side. Like I see a clear path for you, and I think you see a clear path for me.
Agreed. Well, and I think that's why we've collaborated so much, especially over the last year and kind of going on this somewhat solopreneur-ish. I mean, I'm not totally in the same entrepreneur space that you are. And we've talked a lot about this, about having that sort of board of directors, personal board of directors. I have people inside and outside the industry I rely on. You're one of them on that board that I run stuff by you all the time, and vice versa. And I think that's, you know, you need people like that to inspire you and be like, no, I see the path here. Like, you got to stay on it. I think that's why there's really good business coaches out there, because sometimes you can't even get out of your own way to know the difference between your products and your company brand, your personal brand, and where the gray area kind of lives in that Venn diagram of the three.
Yes, and I think you're onto something of like taking yourself out of that. Like being able to like with whether it's structured or not, pull yourself out of your daily, pull yourself out of the aspects of what you're doing and constant nature of your business to look at it with quasi fresh eyes, even if you can't pull together a council and you can't afford a business consultant or whatever which you can always do it because they always pay for themselves in the end. Find some way to do that. If I have advice for anybody else that's listening to this that is trying to glean some aspect of anything from me, it's that you can find a way to do that. Like for I've set a 90-day calendar item for myself to completely block out 2 days straight to do that. And then my next one, since I'm only like 3 hours away from the Lake of the Ozarks, I've planned to go down there and to just hold myself up in the cabin on the lake and to just focus on weird different aspects of the business. And then I had this little like idea in my head of like, do I turn this into an event and invite other entrepreneurs and other people that are there? And I'm like, I don't know yet. I don't know if I want to do that. But I'm like, there's that event planner, aspect in me. And I'm like, it's in my bones. I can't get it out.
I mean, I think that's how, like, we're both part of Club Ichi, so shout out to Club Ichi
Yeah.
here. But that's sort of what
Yes.
the Barefoot Business and Secret Family Reunion, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's sort of where all of that came from, is like disconnect, turn your brain off. It's part
Yes.
networking, part personal development. I mean, that's why, look, I'm not going to speak for Liz. I don't know why she started them, but where I'm sitting, like, that's kind of how those evolved from this, you thinking about bringing people to Lake of the Ozarks and having a
Yeah.
business retreat, if you will.
I want to shed so much praise on them for what they're doing there. So me going to IMAX for the first time this year, it was like my base and my core area where I knew like if nothing else was happening, I'll default to this. And by default, it's like underselling what they actually brought to the table. Because like every night I went there for the first night and I was like, okay, this is great. Like 50
And
intimate
when you say go there,
conversations with
for those
people.
that don't know, at IMAX, Club
Yes.
Ichi had like a club house. So they like rented this house off the strip that was open to all members. I was part of the hosted buyer group. And then one of the nights they opened it up, I think, to the whole industry. So when Mark says to go there, it was the Club Ichi Clubhouse in Vegas at IMAX.
Clubhouse is like an undersell of this because it was like a compound of like 3 houses, a couple
Yeah.
of pools in the courtyard, a pickleball court, all of this stuff. I was like, you got there and you're like, this is weird, what's happening? And then you go back past the fence and you're like, holy shit, this is
Yeah.
cool. Like, this is fun.
Yeah. It was a cool
And
space for sure.
that's basically what that is. And I don't know. So what that offered though was exactly that. It was like a removal from the 17,000 people that were at IMAX to create that separate experience that was more intimate, that was still there, but not quite. There's value in that. That's why there's a whole industry and things exactly like this.
So, rounding this out before we take a hard pivot to a different topic, what's the last event that you've been to that actually inspired you? I mean, you're talking about maybe even creating your own because you found inspiration in these sort of small solitude, Club Ichi, having their clubhouse, for lack of better words. Is there an event you went to recently that you left and you totally inspired, started implementing stuff for yourself, your business, whatever that looked like?
The most impactful one of late was PCMA's convening leaders in San Diego. I wasn't in Houston, so I can't really speak to that. But San Diego was just fantastic. Like, I came back from that. Um, I feel like just kind of a different person, if you will. The district space, they're kind of like not so expo space. Took place in the sales pavilion, and anybody that's not familiar with that is like it's a fabric roof with like views of the bay and views of the city out with the other side and windows everywhere, and it's like Gaylord properties offer like a lot of like daylight, but like this was like you're literally in daylight
I
constantly
love the
there. It
sale
was
pavilion
fantastic.
except
And
from like 2 to 4
yes,
PM when it's a sauna. So like you catch me in there
we
except for the afternoon when it's like hot as hell.
at Heritage, we actually like hot shotted like a bunch of sunglasses in because there was like a 1 hour point on either side of the day when the sun was rising and setting, when it was coming in and just like baking you and hitting you and like killing your retinas. So like unbranded sunglasses, and we just gave them out of goodwill because that was happening during our install there. And we're like, this is going to be a problem for everybody.
It
And
is every show.
people will use these.
Anyway,
And they were all going.
derail.
They were
The
all going.
sale pavilion
Yeah.
is very inspirational for Mark. He loves
Yes.
it. So what
Yes.
happened at CL in San Diego and sale pavilion that left you so inspired?
The sales pavilion being kind of like up and in the middle of the entire space with meeting spaces on one side, meeting spaces on the other. So you had to actually travel through that. And it was like this really awesome cohesive space. But the general session was down on the main level. So like there was this whole like density of the 4,000 to 5,000 people that were there on site that were all in that same space, and we weren't spread out and lost like you normally get at some of the events. And like it was just a really fantastic uh, just moment of all the different components, like everything pieced together spatially, overlapped for the time usage in a really fantastic way. And I mean, look, I've got an architectural background, and that's like my gateway into the industry. So like, of course, I'm going to talk about things like that and how that brought value. But the programming was great. Like it fed into everything else that was going on at the event. It was really loud, which I know for our neurodivergent friends that are sensitive to that, it might have been a challenge. But we also created opportunities on the floor for them to be able to just like go sit literally in a 1 meter by 2 meter like room with a chair that was like a quiet little space away. And it was things like that. Like, I don't know. For me personally, that one was one where I walked away as like, this was like a case study that I can pick apart for years and try to re-implement. And like, as at the time, Heritage was the GSC, and I was doing strategy and design for the PCMA program. And like, the thought in my head was, how in the flying fuck are we going to replicate this for next year in Houston? And I walked away from Heritage before I could complete that thought and come to realities for it. But like, and it was like in my head for 4 months at least for that time when I was still there at Heritage after PCMA. Like, how is this topped? Like, how do we facilitate that? I don't know.
I
I'm
mean,
not
that's
sure.
why part of
And
what I love about this industry is always like you set the bar and you reach it, and then you're like, oh shit, how do we then? Now the bar
totally.
has been raised again, and you're like, what are we going to do to get there? And somehow we always find a way to get there. But in that moment,
Yes.
you're just like, we designed it too well. Like, I don't know how we do better than this. Where do we go from here? And that's like one of the best feelings, like as an event designer, is when you exceed that bar that you've set for yourself and you see the energy and you can feel the energy in that room and you're like, man, I really designed something impactful and people are walking away inspired. And then you're like, okay, now we have to go do that again, usually in a totally different space than we did. And even if it is in the same space, like I think about South by, like how challenging that is, or even TED,
That is going to
right?
be
When you
so interesting.
do the
Yeah.
program in the same space, like how do you top it every year? Or Dreamforce just wrapped up, right? So like how do you make Dreamforce better every year when it's always in the same space? How do you elevate South by when it's always in Austin or TED in Vancouver? That sometimes even brings its own challenge versus having a new space to draw inspiration from, like having to create in the same environment year after year.
The key is in what those organizations did. And the reason that they are those anchor events that you list off like that is that they've focused on the experience that is that event, and how that creates a very, like, it's a hallmark of them. Like, you talk about a TED Talk and pretty much everybody knows what you're talking about. Anybody that's been to South by Southwest knows what the Southwest aspect is. And they lean into the experience of the attendee and the stakeholders that are there, and making sure that that's amplified, because if you're not doing it, then you're going to have a turnover that's kind of similar to what everybody else in the industry is seeing, that's not paying attention to their stakeholders from an experience. They see a crazy high turnover, and people struggle to get back out to TED and to South by Southwest in those, because it just gets so expensive because so many people are trying to go there. That's the challenge. It's like,
Absolutely.
how do I afford it this year? How do I fit it in the budget?
Yeah. Okay, well, we're gonna make a hard pivot because I could talk about event design and all the
Yes.
brands and all that. But one of the things you and I are both, obviously, by this conversation, I hope people realize how passionate we are about events and the industry. And that definitely segues into a lot of the advocacy work that you and I both participate in. ECA, Exhibition and Conference Alliance, is one that hosts a big legislative action day that you and I both attend every year. I mean, I make budget and time for that. It's absolutely one of my favorite days of the year. Talk a little bit about what you love about advocacy and like where you hope to see more work being done in that space for us.
Just in the same way of like sales and marketing budget, I feel like that is something that has to be and needs to be budgeted appropriately, because there's costs that are associated with it from time and money. Like, I spend money to go out to DC to take place in that on an annual basis, because there's a value to cost ratio that's a-okay to me. And the where I see value in that, and where the reason that I say that is because let's take it back to 2020. Like, everybody forgot about us as an industry. Like, we were the secret industry that operated behind the curtain, and that's how we built it. But because of that, everybody forgot about us and left us kind of in the cold for such a long period of time, until the industry came together and formed BCA. And what Tommy Goodwin has done over there to advocate for us over the years is fantastic. And it's not like, I'll say this. I've learned so much about the U.S. government and how we operate on a more intimate basis just after being there, boots on the ground, for the first.
It's eye-opening the first time you go. Like for people, like to actually go and be on the Hill and go in these meetings and walking from building to building. I mean, that alone is worth doing it one year just to see the way your own government works.
The number of times I've been lost in one of those buildings, which is really dumb to say because it's just a loop. It goes around, but like every floor looks the same, and every
Yes,
floor looks the same. And there's only exits on one side of each one.
correct.
But like, and the staffers are so damn young. I'm like, how are you the one that is associated with this? But you ask them any question about the subject matter that you're there to talk on, and they have the answers like that. And as soon as you say something that piques their interest, then they start scribbling something down furiously to take back to their representative. It's like, oh, this is how it works.
Yeah, the government's run by a bunch of 20-year-olds, in case anyone's curious. It's still a little Mad Men-esque in the government space.
Yes. but it's fascinating. This is going to show my own like terrible nature. I'm like judging a book by its cover is like exactly what I did. I like totally discredited them until like we started actually having an open interaction, and I was like, fucking A, this is cool. Like
Yeah.
this is great, and like policy in action and things in motion here. I love that aspect of it, and like the thing I would say is it let me see how slow politics actually is, and that's good as long as you have things in motion. And that's exactly what ECA does. Is like they just make sure that the ball keeps moving, and it's never going to move like a million miles an hour. It's going to be a multi-year process, just like the labor initiatives that went through, and just like the tax issues that went through. Those were major wins from the 529 plan expansion to allow for the industry to actually start training people off of the funds that are saved. And it's like, I can't remember how many billions of dollars that is on an annual basis, but like Teamsters, stagehands, and all of these guys can benefit by folks that were looking at like, well, I have to go to college because everybody went to college, and it's like you don't have to. You can get trained for this and make six figures like
Yeah, welders,
after you've
riggers. I
gone through it.
mean, I was just reading that the
Yeah.
next set of millionaires are going to be electricians and plumbers, and they're not wrong.
Oh yeah.
Not wrong. And there's so many unsung heroes. Like my brother-in-law works for a GSC and loves it. I mean, went to college for a minute, didn't love it, and found himself in this events industry too. I mean, all of us have, I think at this point, we're just now seeing people who are going to school to be trained to do things. And the the people, not just event managers, but the riggers, the welders, the electricians, the plumbers. We need all of that in the event space. And you don't have to go to a traditional 4-year school. And, we're seeing a ton of trade schools now offering things that benefit the events industry that you wouldn't necessarily think about from a traditional, like 4-year university path.
If for anybody that's doubting what Megan has just said there, like I was literally having a conversation with someone, GSC, that had an $800,000 rigging bill that was billed over for comprehensively for the show. And like, if you break that down on the number of crews and the amount of work that has to go into that, that's only one show, happened on one day in one city in one place. And I'm like, they're not all that big, but like you multiply that out across everything else, and that's a skilled trade that you have to be certified on. And like there's a lot of complexity that goes into it that is why that costs so much. If you ever question why your rigging is $1,200 per hour or $900 per hour, that's why. It's because there's a lot of safety, a lot of knowledge that goes into it.
Well, because of the 529 that we were advocating on Advocacy Day this year, that was one of the initiatives, was being able to open that up to certifications, because prior, for context, that was only allowed to be used for traditional universities, sort of that 4-year, 2-year get a degree, not certificate programs. So now that those funds, and I know many of my friends who have kids that are graduating from high school now are not going to traditional university. They're taking the gap year. They're maybe going to a trade school. The path looks different. And now they can use those funds that their parents have been saving for, because they were like, your kid's got to go to college. I mean, that's how all of us were like, you're going to graduate, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a job. Like that was ingrained in us. And I think we're finding out there's people interested in more different paths, and that's not for everyone. And now they can at least access the funds, which benefits our industry, that riggers maybe will be more affordable to meeting planners, because it's not such a niche certificate that only a handful of people have. Like when there's competition, price can come down. So maybe riggers will only charge us, $1,000 an hour instead of 12, because there's more people who can do that job. Probably a horrible analogy, but there we are.
I think maybe we'll see that come down. But the problem is, everything else increases as we continue to go along. So I think what will happen is we'll be able to do more because there's now a skilled labor pool that is based off of that. And like I love a good union town that has the best balance of cost to skill set ratio. There are some markets that are high costs with a lower to skill to dollar ratio than there are in some other markets where it's outweighed. And there's some markets where you don't have skilled labor in there at all, and it sucks. Like you have to bring in 20 or 30 people to then cover the folks that are there in town who have never put in a trade show or an event, and they're used to just like they're used to putting in a concert. It's like we don't do that.
I mean, another thing meeting planners never think about is the actual labor that takes to go into producing their shows. They're like, oh, I've got my general service contractor, I've got my AV team, they're handling it. And the bottom line of your event very much impacts a lot of what your contractors are seeing and doing from a labor perspective. So advocacy is important. And that was going to be sort of my next question to you is like, where would you like to see advocacy in our industry grow? I mean, I have my thoughts on where I would like it. I'm curious. ECA, Legislative Action Day 2026, what do you hope to see there? Not from a policy
Um,
perspective, but a industry
okay, that's
participation. What can we do as people that work in events every day do better to support groups like Live Events Coalition, the ECA? What do you hope to see our industry do more of next year at
so I would say this, like just showing up, like physically showing up and advocating for folks, because when you go into the room and you tell them that you're a constituent of theirs, they then start paying attention to you instead of kind of quasi ignoring you. Like for a representative from, I was there as a representative from Missouri, and I was the only one. I was the only one, and the year before that there was no Missouri representative, and I joined the California delegation because Heritage had just opened up a branch there, and like basically, like I was with a good group of people. Like there was a bunch of us. They kind of didn't pay attention to me because I wasn't a true constituent. They did kind of when they realized that we had a business operating there, but beyond that, it was kind of like weird. So like I would say showing up and showing up consistently to have that message. Like the one thing I would love for Tommy and his team to do is to organize more than just one event that's there, to be able to have people come and advocate for that more than that, to be able to keep making sure that that stays in front of them. But honestly, just showing up and attending, like it makes, if you're thinking in your head, like, well, there's enough people that are going, they've got that coverage. Like it's not really, like there's strength in numbers and there's power that comes along with that to be able to convey a message. And yeah, we don't want to show up into one of the staffers offices with like 100 people and like bombard them, especially when we're normally having conversations in a hallway because you can't fit 4 people into those crammed it
Yep.
like
Offices
office
are
spaces.
small. They're very small.
It's unbelievably small. I would say showing up and being active, like being active to what that is. Like, and I get it. It's hard to pay attention to it because a lot of the things are, they cater towards the executive level of any organization and what the impact is, because they're planning on an annual or a 5-year plan, and how things are going to be like actually affecting them long term.
Right.
And that's the challenge, is it's not like Mark of today is not going to be able to do much of anything with the information that comes across. It's Mark of next week or Mark of 2 months from now, when some of the policies get enacted and the results of them are things that we can actually do. So that's a challenge, like I would say. And seeing past that and just knowing that like you're a grain of sand on the beach. If you remove all the grains of sand from the beach, it would suck, you know. But each one has its own little component of making that beach a beach. Otherwise, it's just kind of a body of water.
I would hope for that too. And I think just to echo that and add, yes, and finding ways for individual contributors to participate more. And that's something I take away every year as the sole Montana representative that always comes. And, you know, I don't work for a big brand that can write a big check to ECA and contribute. And so, how can I support Tommy and the work that he's doing, support the work of the industry as an individual contributor? Like, all I really can give is my time. And I'm willing to give more of that because I am passionate in this space. And there's really no pathway for me to do that at a level that I'd be willing to give right now, because I can't write the big check. But I can show up in the room and I can have the conversations. And I would like to see that more of them encouraging the individual contributors like you and I are. And maybe we're the Sherpas of that, of like, if you're a meeting planner and you want to go, Mark and I will be there. We'll show you the ways, you know, that you can support this industry, even its little things like Like we were talking about the coding system and like getting events as a drop down of industry and not lumped in with hospitality. Like the easiest thing you can do is just sign and support that. Send that letter that we already wrote for you. You know, I think there's little things that could help get more people involved in the advocacy side. And I would just love to see ECA and Live Events Coalition and the other advocacy groups out there like tap into that more. There's a lot of us out there that want to contribute our time that can't necessarily contribute financially. And I don't sometimes feel like that's not enough. And I wish it was. And I want there to be more pathways for that.
The other avenues that I actually really like that they have presented is the opportunity uh, to contribute into editorial purposes through publications and some of the local areas. So like for some of these topics to be able to author to co-author it with the ECA team into like the Post Dispatch that's here in St. Louis, to contribute something into that, whether or not it's picked up or not, you're pushing that over into the local politics so that it stays on the radar for them too, so that it is something that is not just lost. And that is a big component of what is done at the national level in a local capacity that everyone can take a part in. Like jumping into ECA's lists, you're not sold to. You're not like constantly being asked for money. It's nothing like that. It's like the outreach that Tommy and his team does to activate the people that are there is such a minimal lift that I'm like, Tommy, is there something else I can do? I don't feel like
Right.
I'm doing enough for you. And he's like, no, no, no. Like, I got you. I got you. So it's like it's awesome on that side where it's super easy to get involved, and there's several avenues for anybody to be able to jump into right now and feel like they have contributed. But again, you're not going to see an instant, like it's not like the Wizard of Oz when the door opens and the whole world turns to color. It's not that.
Or
It's
like
going to
volunteering
be
with
a
some of the
progression.
other alphabet soups, like as soon as you join a PCMA or an MPI, immediately they're going to be like, volunteer, get involved, get on committee, and then all of a sudden you
Yes,
have like
it's
this
not
whole
that.
other full-time job. It's certainly not that. It's every once in a while you get an email from Tommy that says like, man, we're trying to push this through, call your rep, send this letter. It's 5 minutes of work that he asks of us. To your point, I always feel like I should be doing more. Like I'm willing and
Yes,
want,
I
and like,
know.
how do I do more? Right?
And like that's a big challenge on their side too. So like I gotta give props to Tommy. I'm like it, finding these opportunities. It's like I feel like I know the industry pretty well, but like I don't know the governmental affairs side of things pretty well of how it interacts with it. And kudos to them for finding these avenues because they're sophisticated and simple for us to be able to do. It's not easy to do that.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not.
Tommy is a very special, special job. Okay, as we're rounding out
Yes.
our time here on the after show, we've had a lot of dynamic dialogue and encourage. We'll send links out to ECA and all the ways you can join Mark and I in the advocacy side of things. But I kind of want to close out as we're talking about changing models from getting people into the industry. The events itself are evolving, and the way we work in events and do events are evolving. You and I both are pushing for a lot of innovation, changing models. We talked about associations sometimes struggle against brands like TED and South by that are really listening to their constituents. Not that associations don't, but we get stuck in this rinse and repeat. And we talked in the podcast about time being the biggest draw to like events, like the draw on our energies is time. What is something that planners can do to get out of that rinse and repeat cycle? Like without totally blowing up the budget, how can I just change a little bit to keep my event exciting, whether I'm moving it or it's in the same place? That bar gets raised every time we do a program. So, how do we get out of the rinse and repeat to keep our stakeholders engaged and wanting to come back for more?
I've got a percentage kind of mentality or mindset to what amount needs to be innovative on a program or what amount can be innovative on a program. And that's a good starting point to be able to leverage change off of. So like they say, you shouldn't change a program more than 40%. Otherwise you're going to isolate your membership base, your stakeholders, your exhibitors, anybody that's familiar with the program, assuming this isn't a new program, like that's a whole issue. But if you have a year over year history, don't change, like keep 60% intact, the majority of it intact. And what you can do is find what components you want to have fall into that bucket. Like find what is, whether it's based off of assumptions or data, just set a markers, plant a flag in that aspect of it. 60% of your program that is going to stay the same. You don't have to worry about trying to change that. But then the other 40% that's maybe your sandbox to have some fun in, like devote all of your energy and resources into that. Like try to see ways that you can look at the customer journey of someone interacting with that space, that program, or whatever that is, from the first email that they received to talk about that to them leaving the event and having a post-survey analysis. Look at every phase through that and see if you can have just like a slightly +1, just however positive, however much, just plot out that process there. And once you have that plotted for what their existing program was maybe last year, you can then add that +1 to each of the stages that are occurred. And if you can break it out into that like chunk, it's a lot less intimidating than looking at like a blank page and trying to determine what you want to draw on it. It's like innovation for innovation's sake is not gonna, like, it's not gonna do anything. And what's innovative to one person may not be to another, but anybody who's interacting with those programs, the 4 out of 10 programs that you're enacting change on, will see something that is in a net positive for them. So that's how I would do it.
I like that now, the 60/40. And then thinking about, we hear this resistance all the time. One, you as a consultant probably hear it from clients, well, we've always done it that way. Or internally,
Yeah.
the planners that want to bring innovation and then hear from their, stakeholders or bosses, well, we've always done it that way. You can't even have the 40% to innovate. How do you combat that phrase, we've always done it that way? Because that is a killer to innovation, like immediately. So before the sentence is even out of your mouth, you're like, well, there goes all our inspiration and innovation. So like, how do we overcome the we've always done it that way?
There's a certain comfort in always doing it that way. So we had an acronym for that when we were at Heritage. It's called Sally, same as last year. So for a Sally program, there's comfort, you know exactly what you're getting. If it's in the same venue, the same time of year, the same exhibitors, and everything is the same, it's Groundhog's Day. But what ends up happening is you get like a diminishing return off of that, and you wonder why, like 5 years down the road, that like why are we losing money on this event instead of it being like the champion that it used to be? For those people that are saying, I love a Sally event, like why not? Why change? Why change what's not broken? You have to look at it from the perspective of what are their goals, like how do they measure success, and how can you show value? Because in any change, any innovation, there's the questionable or unknown future and the unknown result that's going to occur. So if you can paint a picture of what that destination looks like for them, and you have breadcrumbs leading to that based on what is a measured success from their perspective, not just like what your perspective is or the exhibitors or the attendees, because that may not matter to a CFO. Like a CFO may not care if they have a 50% drop in attendance, but they're making more money than what they started out with. Like they don't care. So like if you can measure the success of that final program based on the filter of that person who's saying that, then you know honestly how to sell to them, because that's what you're doing. You're selling that final concept and that innovative idea to them and everybody else that's involved. So finding what makes a win for them on that side will allow them to say yes, because if they're being measured on, again, the CFO looking for it to be in a net positive and a continued increase, then you paint a picture of either the same as last year event is going to maintain or lose trajectory versus this change, which will have a higher probability of an upward trajectory. How can they say no?
Yeah,
They have to say
it's
yes.
a great point. Love that framing. I think telling the story, we talk about that all the time.
Yes.
Context matters, telling the story, telling them what they gain. And value is like the buzzword I think of the year here. Okay, so thinking about
Yes.
that, and people are going through budgets, they're starting to plan for the year. Think 2026, two things. What's an innovation everyone is pushing for now that you think is going to age poorly? And something that you're really excited that you hope to see in the events world in 26.
Something that has already started to show its ugly head is the overuse of AI in everything that we're doing. Like it is very much a tool. And for anybody that's not on the AI bandwagon yet, please jump on. We're having fun. You know, it's something where people are like learning what overuse is and what AI slop is, and just how it contributes in a negative way from overuse. And then on the flip side, what I'm looking forward to is that evolution, like how it's being used to inform and to process and to gain efficiency for the end result of the experience. Like if we're not losing focus and not losing sight on what we're marching towards, which is an amplification of experience, um, I don't know. That's what we're after. Like the unique aspect of what we do at its core in the business events industry is we have like a, I don't know, Kevin Bacon has 6 points of connection to everybody, but I swear we have two, like just two to every person on earth. Like, and like we have an ability to really impact globally what is going on through the efforts that we have, and we do that through the ability to create greater human connections and shared experiences with each other on these events. These, I don't know, 4,000 people, 200 people, 5 people, whatever it is, they will never be there at that one point in time again, and they will never be in the same mental state. They will never, the socioeconomic surroundings will never be the same. They all converge into one moment that's creating something that, if we've designed that moment correctly to the greatest ability of what we do, it can have profound effects for those people as they go off and live their lives in other areas. And like, that's where I was joking, I think, a little bit ago about like changing the world. And it's like, we have a strong ability to do that, more so than like a lot of other people. And I hope that people in the business events industry see the value that they bring on that side. And it's hard to see that sometimes, because you're on your 12th cup of coffee for the day and 12 hours of sleep for 5 days. And you don't see how you fit into the bigger picture. My wish, you didn't ask for this, but my wish for 2026 for every single person is to see that value, you know, to in those moments of when the pendulum swings down and you feel like a piece of shit, which we all do sometimes. You know that this is this is just now, and this too shall pass, and you'll be on the upswing again if you can think about how you fit into the greater landscape of how we find ourselves in the world.
Think that's an amazing place to leave it, and great advice going into the year. So thank you, Marc, for being real. You are the brand builder, the industry agitator. I think there's 1,000 adjectives I could think of for you. And to our listeners today, if this lit a spark, I hope it does. It certainly did for me. And go make something bite out of all the inspiration you had from this episode. And until next time, keep it bold, keep it moving, and keep eventing about it. Thanks for being here, Marc.